Here.
Perfect.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have the pleasure of having Gino DeRose, recruiting manager for E&J Gallo Winery sales and leadership team. He'll be walking us through the new normal, working remotely and finding virtual opportunities. A little bit about Gino. He is a Sonoma State University alum, the double major in wine business strategies and marketing. Has been with Gallo for about 3.5 years, and he started his career as a sales representative and has become a district manager. Over a year ago, he relocated to sunny Southern California, where he joined the recruiting team focusing on recruiting college campuses. So he focuses now on college recruitment efforts where he strives to develop long-lasting relationships with faculty and students, advocate for E&J Gallo Wine's sales programs. He hosts professional development workshops and so much more. And so today we have the pleasure of just having him just giving us his wisdom in terms of what this new normal that we're living in now is all about. So I will stop my screen share and I'll have Gino take over.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I think I need to have you give me the ability to share screen and then I can take that over. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. Super excited to be able to chat with you all. I know we don't have cameras on that side, but we do have the chat feature open. So I really encourage you to hop in the chat, ask questions throughout the presentation. I'd love to lend some insight to you all. And so like I mentioned, today we're really going to be focusing on the new normal, working remotely, and then finding virtual opportunities and how does that look like standing out. And so we're going to start by going through how to ultimately find these opportunities. What does that look like? And then making sure that we're talking through those best practices of working remote. How do we maintain our health through this? And then walking through some insight that our team can lend to you. If you don't mind just checking into the event, just as just our way to stay connected with you all, we will host some other workshops across other areas of campus as well. And so if you'd like to know about those, just scan that QR code and sign on in. Additionally, I can send the link in the chat right there for you. So if you want to sign in through that way, that is easy as well. But thank you all for coming tonight. I'm looking forward to get started. And so as we look to the future of the new norm that we now live in, it's now up to us to really put our best effort forward to go out there and get noticed by recruiters. This can often be really challenging for many of us because now we're in a virtual setting. We don't have the ability to go onto campus and walk up to that recruiter at the career fair. It's a little unconventional, but there's still a lot of ways that we have the ability to get noticed. And really a lot of that is going to be getting out there. And so getting out there is looking a little different this semester because again, we're stuck virtually. So really leaning on those opportunities like such, hosted by the career centers and campus faculty and staff to connect with various recruiters. Use these opportunities to step out of your comfort zone and go and talk to them. And whether that means signing up for a group session or a workshop like this, reaching out to professionals on LinkedIn, which we'll talk about in a little bit and what that looks like. And also talking through how can we approach these recruiters. And we'll really get into what are some of those skills and how do we best sell ourselves. But I think most importantly, and you all can probably agree with me, that USC has one of the best alumni networks across the entire country. And so really by having such a strong established networks, I really recommend students to use those referrals of faculty and staff, professors, those alumni networks, or those organizations on campus, whether they're student ran or career service focused, use those opportunities to get your foot in the door and have them make a connection. Oftentimes us recruiters will reach out to these faculty and staff on campus and ask about ways that we can connect with students. So they're oftentimes the first person that can direct you in the right way. And then from there, you can schedule one-on-one Zoom interviews and informational interviews to learn more about the organization or an industry. When trying to connect with these recruiters, one of the most important things you can do is be prepared and have your resume ready to go. I think one of the easiest things to do is just keep it simple and straight to the point. As you see here, my little screenshot from Mean Girls, when she hands her professor the resume and she says it's pink and he says, oh, and it's scented. I think it gives it a little something extra, she says. And so I think keep it straightforward. Don't overcomplicate things with the resumes, especially when you're connecting in virtual events where a recruiter may be working quickly as things are stuck on a certain time frame. You want to be able to make it impactful and you want it to be able to be quick so that when they scan through, they're like, wow, this is a very qualified candidate. And so we're going to walk through elevator pitches briefly, but really that is your opportunity to sell yourself. When we think about an elevator pitch is our opportunity to highlight a little bit about who we are. So where we're going to school, what our interests are, the experiences that we've gained and how they've shaped us. So I think being specific with that, and then also leaning in on what is your goals and what are you trying to achieve. So being able to highlight what those end goals are going to be and what the end conversation would ultimately walk away with if presented that opportunity. Have those pitches ready. Although you may not be going and connecting with a recruiter tomorrow, you never know who you can come in contact with. And it's really important to make sure that you have that idea of what you're going to be trying to work towards. And if you don't, just try to have an idea of what can we be practicing now to be prepared. Getting noticed. So we really want to, again, make sure that we're getting noticed. And since recruiters are actively on campus, one of the main things that they're going to be looking for is quality versus quantity. And so when we think about quality experiences, what are some examples of a quality experience that a recruiter may be looking for from a student? And if you guys want to answer that, throw that in the chat. I'm looking through the chat right now and we can kind of have a dialect about that. What are some qualities of a successful candidate? I'm getting you guys out of your comfort shell. We'll wait a quick second. I'd love to have at least 1 or 2 responses in there before we keep going. Anyone? No? Okay. I'll let you guys warm up a little bit then, and then we'll get to it in a second. So when we think about those successful candidates and the qualities that come along with it, a lot of that is going to be that involvement that they maybe had on campus. So that could be leadership through student involvement with like student organizations. Additionally, it could be work experience, whether it's internship or working throughout college, being able to highlight those experiences. Additionally, this is also a great opportunity for you to try and highlight those people skills, which can be oftentimes really difficult to convey in a resume. Effective communicators, natural leadership, ability to work well in teams, problem solving, all those skills that you would want to have if you think you were running your own business. What are the qualities of your team that you would want to build out? And so I always think, and I always tell students, think about those qualities and think about how have your experience helped shape those today. And that's what's going to help you get your foot in that door and put you in the best position possible. Lean in on those resources again, like you see, professors, alumni, and various services across campuses can really help you. And so after you've kind of had an idea of where you want to go with it, now is our time to network. And although networking, again, like we said, isn't necessarily coming up and shaking a recruiter's hand on campus, we can still be really successful with that. And so the world that we live in today is going to be a lot more digital focused. We're living in a virtual setting, and it's going to be something that we have to get comfortable with for the time being. And it's something that we're going to have to adapt and adjust to. And I know it's a lot of formality and not necessarily too comfortable for some of us. So we got to get comfortable being uncomfortable for a little bit. And so really the first ways that we're going to go through professional networking is in that digital or online. Instagram and Facebook, the reason I highlight this is no, we're not going to go and reach out to a recruiter on Instagram or Facebook, but this is a great way to learn more about industries or companies as they talk about their culture and they show employees and what the job entails. A great way to get your ideas and a wrap around what you may be interested in so that you can provide some context of when you do connect with that recruiter. That's then going to bring us into when we're actually making those professional connections, leveraging our emails or LinkedIn. Again, you have the opportunity to really lean on that Trojan network of finding professionals that were either part of the USC family or recruiters that are coming to look for USC students and reaching out to them via email to connect and schedule time to chat, to learn either more on the phone about their experiences or even hop on Zoom too, now as we've all adapted that into our day-to-day lives. And then last but very certainly not least, I think the best one you can lean in on is LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn now, I really encourage you to go out there and create one very soon. This is an awesome opportunity for you to really showcase all the successes you've had in your professional career, from classes that you take that may be relevant to certain industries, to work experience, to internships, and even involvement over your time at USC. All great things that you should be talking to with recruiters. Now, face-to-face, the reason I put this on here is yes, we're not going on to campus and meeting face-to-face, but just like tonight, we are still face-to-face. It's a little bit different than usual, but you can still have these opportunities to connect with recruiters, either in group events like such. Maybe it's a professional development workshop or a networking night. Really take advantage of those opportunities to come and showcase what you can bring to the table and what you can add to an organization. or one-on-one events. Again, leaning in on those connections that you have in your networks already to help get your foot in the door and direct you down that path of having the time to schedule a one-on-one informational interview. Speaking to obstacles that maybe the recruiter faced in their career and how they overcame those. Learning more about that organization. So when the interview time does come and you're connecting with those hiring managers, you're prepared to talk about how you can come in and make an impact right away. And so I wanted to be able to talk about, as we live in this virtual setting, some of those best practices around digital, especially with social media and LinkedIn. I think first and foremost, our social medias, and when we say social media for this sense, let's think Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. We want to keep those clean and we want to keep them professionally. I think the analogy that I always use is if you don't want mom, if you don't want grandma, and you don't want your professor to see it, it does not need to be on social media. Additionally, if you have to go through all these loopholes to make all these parameters so certain people can't see something, it probably shouldn't be online. And I can promise you that by having stuff private, it does not mean that it is going to stay private if you are posting it online. Employers aren't necessarily going and looking through your Instagram to learn all about you, but really when you go and Google your own name, and I encourage you guys to do that, you never know what's going to pop up. And a lot of the times it goes LinkedIn, your Instagram, your Facebook, and it immediately takes you right to those accounts because that's where the most activation is with your name. And so yes, although your account may be your profile may be private, excuse me, you never know when something can sneak out of that and possibly end up on the images page. So again, you always want to leave the best representation of yourself, especially now that we all live in virtual. And follow the companies. That's a great way for you to gain insight about the organization, understand relevant news with what they have going on. And when we get to the next slide about talking how can we connect with recruiters, you'll have something more tailored and it doesn't seem like it's kind of a mass email send out to a lot of recruiters. You can talk about a specific example of something you saw on Instagram or something you read on their company website that stuck out to you. As we now talk about LinkedIn and our professional details, we want to make sure that that's up to date. So all of your involvement that you've had over your time at USC, I always tell students too, I know I made the mistake early on in my career. I use the example of I worked in a restaurant and I started as a busser and then became a food runner and a server. But I only put the server role on there. I left out those other two roles prior. But within that, it showed that I was able to gain the trust of the organization, being the restaurant that I worked with, and also take on additional responsibilities. So make sure that you have all roles that were held, whether in student orgs or whether in a work career. Make sure you list all of that out. Our professional headshots, again, we don't want it to be at a party with some friends. We want to have professional representations of ourselves. So we've all got those portrait modes on our iPhones and mobile devices. So take a good picture of yourself, or when we can get back on campus, I know there's a lot of resources for those as well. And then although you may not be in your career role now, you can still have a professional email signature with some sort of position or experience, whether it's a student organization and what your involvement is with that, or whether it's your current role in the organization that you work for today while you're going to school. Being able to have that professional signature shows that you're willing to take the little time, and attention to detail really does go a long way. And then just keeping those professional email names. I remember being a young kid, I had the email that was like skaterboy29@yahoo.com. I had to make sure to update those to just my first and last name at gmail.com. So make sure that you're using those professional emails, and even those USC emails are a great way for you to kind of make that gap. I wanted to provide you guys with just some context of what are some ways that we can reach out to recruiters. And I wanted to show 3 examples of how can you maximize that connection that you can create on LinkedIn. And so for those of you, if you're not familiar with LinkedIn all that much, when you make a connection with a new individual, whether it's a recruiter or an employee at an organization, if you do it through the computer, you can actually click add a note and put a little, I think 300 to 500 character message. And so these are a couple examples of messages that you can put in, depending on what that conversation was. So maybe we met Mike and it was at some sort of networking event or at a dinner, and we were able to learn a little bit more about him. In this message, we talk about, hi, Mike, great meeting you at Greg's anniversary dinner. I hope you enjoy your time at Parents Weekend in Utah. Let's grab lunch when you're back. I'd like to hear more about your opinion on the upcoming acquisition. So looking at that little message, what makes that a strong message to reach out to a recruiter? If someone could chime in, I'd love to have a little participation. What do you guys think makes that a very impactful message with recruiters? Anyone have any insight? There's no such thing as wrong answers. Friendly, short, to the point, yet personable. Yes, thank you, Kimberly. Exactly. It's concise, it's straight to the point, it's very personable, and it's actually very specific to something that they talked about. It shows that the individual was invested in that conversation with Mike and they really cared about what they were talking about and wanted to be able to follow up on that. Let's move to the next one. So hi, Mike. It was great connecting with you again at the USC networking event last week. Let me know if you're able to grab coffee this week. I'd like to learn more about the opportunities your company offers and your experiences. So again, in this example of it, yes, we're asking to go and connect for coffee. But again, this can be instances where we're connecting over Zoom. And really, this is maybe where we follow up from a networking event hosted by campus, or maybe the recruiter hosted an event on campus virtually through Zoom. And you send that follow-up email again to kind of bridge that gap. And then the last one, I wanted you guys to kind of have an example of how do you make a connection if you maybe never met them. Hi, Mike. I'm very interested in your family-oriented culture and sales careers at E&J Gallo Winery. Do you have time to meet within the next couple of weeks? I'd like to learn more about your experiences through Gallo or through your 22 years at Gallo. So again, straight, friendly, straight to the point, exactly like Kimberly said. And it's specific, and all it did was taking us to just open up Mike's LinkedIn and learning that he was with Gallo for 22 years. And we found that the organization was family oriented by looking up Gallo, and that was one of the first descriptions of the company. Again, making it specific to the audience, because that is going to show that you put in the time and effort, and those are all the little things that make all the difference in the world. Those elevator pitches. So again, I wanted to just briefly touch on this because although we're not connecting in person, an elevator pitch is still very important as you attend these career events on campus or any sort of networking event. Really, within an elevator pitch, this is your opportunity to sell yourself. At every avenue of our life, we're always going to be selling ourselves, whether you're selling a product, whether you're selling an idea, whether you're selling your opportunity to come and contribute to an organization in an interview. You always are going to be selling yourself. So these are skills that we need to start practicing now and actively practice those. And so I always tell students to highlight those transferable skills that relate to the role that you were applying to. So do a little research prior, learn about what they're looking for in terms of that candidate. I know that I can speak on behalf of all you that there are many of you that I'm sure have applied for a position for a job. And as you go through the posting, you're saying, I have that skill, I have that skill, I have that skill. And that's great. But the recruiter doesn't know that. And so we need to make sure that we sell them on that and demonstrate that. And so by being able to speak about the experiences that we have and what we can offer, so those transferable skills, that's going to really help you sell yourself. And so as we break down that elevator pitch, we'll kind of walk through that. That first portion is going to be that quick introduction. So your name, where you're going to school, that degree. Next would be what are we seeking in that? So the career goals of what you're trying to achieve. A sales position with Gallo. Experiences, so what sort of involvement did you have over your last 4 years, whether again that's work or student involvement, and speaking to how you're working in that, and then what can that help contribute towards the organization, or what can you offer? My advice is write these out on a piece of paper. Grab a red pen, scratch out the stuff that makes it sound redundant, eliminate anything that's extra wordy. I know we want to make it sound spiced up and good, but don't have it be a run-on sentence and too long. These should be roughly 30 seconds to no more than a minute long. Quick and concise. I always say pick a card, label 5 cards. Who, what, how, why, and who for. And you want to have an answer to all those types of questions as you connect with those recruiters. Who are we connecting to? What for? How are we going to be connecting with them and why? And then who are we going to be connecting for following? Add an attention grabber. So something that's going to help you stand out. I think with this, we always think about what is someone else maybe saying? And you always kind of highlight good communication skills, a natural leader. Try to find something that's maybe a little unique, because oftentimes with a recruiter, if they hear the same thing throughout the day, you want to have that opportunity to stand out. And if you have that unique attention getter and or that interesting fact or a stat about your involvement or experiences, that's going to really give you that upper hand against someone that may have come in and talked to them afterwards. And I think last but certainly not least, practice, practice, practice. I fell flat on my face countless times at career fairs by not practicing this fully, by trying to come in and improvise with it too. And until you practice it, you really don't get all that comfortable with it. And you want to work through those bumps. And oftentimes by just saying it out loud in the mirror, you can really kind of figure out what are the rocky parts and what sounds good and smooth. I always tell students too, you always are going to be selling yourself no matter where we are in life. And so I think the first thing that we always want to talk about is what we are strong with. I don't have sales experience, or I don't know much about wine, ... What is the disadvantage to having a student or a candidate come up and start the conversation like that? Why are we already kind of shooting ourselves in the foot from the get-go with that? Yeah, Kimberly said it best. It created negativity already. We're already putting ourselves down and leaning in on the things that we can't bring to the table, when oftentimes there's so many different skills that we can bring to the table. Yes, you may be coming for a sales role and maybe you don't have all the sales experience, but again, you sell yourselves in so many different avenues, and a lot of these types of skills can't be taught. That positive attitude, excitement, people skills, and being able to effectively communicate with people, having a strong work ethic or perseverance. And I think most importantly, especially in times of working virtually, self-motivation. That's a huge factor that a lot of this generation, especially students now, should lean in on, because that is a lot of self-motivation to be able to work from home in a virtual setting, to be able to go to class, stay accountable, and still work through everything that they need to do to grow in your career. Think about what you did versus what you learned. I think oftentimes we get caught on like, what did the role entail and what was my responsibility? When rather we should talk about how did that role change us and help us develop as an individual. And I would also say, I think work experience is not necessarily always key. You can gain a lot of unique experiences through other avenues of your careers. And that again can come in a shadow day. That can come in connecting through informational interviews, doing research yourself, reading on publications and industry knowledge or industry news. Again, work experience isn't always key. A lot of the things that organizations may be looking for can also be taught through that. So to think about, what can I do to make myself unique and stand out? And so I think when we look at these best practices, when we look at athletes create a plan, they prepare and they practice, and then they're ready to perform when that time comes. And you have to look at your career in the same setting. We got to have a plan in line. So a plan starts with being sure about what we want to do. And listen, that's always going to change. And I'm sure that the Career Center would say the same thing in their shoes too, of we've all been there. We know how it is. I've started as a kinesiology major and end up in wine and spirits. So again, you're always growing. And I think it's just being aware of what are you interested in and doing a little bit more of that research to learn what can I be interested in or what may I be good at. So when we look at that, scheduling those informational interviews, doing research on certain industries, I'd even say do self-assessments or strength finders through Clifton. That's a great resource to learn more about yourself and what you can bring to the table, as it asks you some questions about your experiences and what you like to do. And then I would say do research on those companies. So go on to Glassdoor. That's a great website to lean in on. They have anonymous submissions from current employees and past employees about their experiences. And these are going to be great skills that can help you come in and feel more confident about knowing about that organization. Prepare, edit that resume, get it all updated, and ask for that feedback from multiple sources, friends, family, faculty, and staff on campus. We're here to help you. And so lean in on those resources. And I think read out your elevator pitches out loud. Utilize resources like the Career Center and YouTube and such, because those actually have some great leadership trainings, even through LinkedIn Learning too. That was one that we've really adopted recently, and I've loved a lot of those trainings. And then practice those mock interviews, even if it's just with a roommate, or you're hopping on Zoom with some friends of yours to practice those interview skills, which I'll talk on some of those interview practice for Zoom in a little bit. But practice makes perfect. And you got to practice that elevator pitch so that you can be ready to perform. And then when we think about performance, being productive in the moment, I think one of the biggest things you can do is just remain positive and come in with a good attitude and be open-minded. And all that practice that you did before is going to fall into place. Set goals for yourself. We are goal-oriented people, and we want to make sure that we're working towards something. And I know that all of you probably agree that nothing feels better when you've worked really hard for something and you actually achieve it. Pursuing that recruiter. So make sure that you're scheduling those one-on-one meetings. Oftentimes, this is going to be the chance to showcase more than that piece of paper. You want to be prepared for when that time comes. So learn about the position. When will they be on campus next, or at another networking event like this? So think about following up as well. How can we follow up? Whether it's connecting on LinkedIn, whether it's sending a handwritten note, or even an email, these connections should be on that same day, because we want to make sure that we leave that impression and we kind of cross our T's and dot our I's is the way that I kind of explained this one. How to not market yourself. Really within this, I think the biggest thing is we want to watch those abbreviations. Within this, keep it professional. Avoid the like slang of bro and dude. And I don't anticipate that you guys are doing that in emails. But think about it from like a texting perspective. We use all these different sorts of abbreviations and text and stuff, but this is not the time for that in our professional careers. always using correct punctuation, proofread, proofread, proofread. If I can have you guys walk away with anything, it's proofread those emails and connections that we make. Keep things short and concise because recruiters go through a lot of these resumes. And I'd say don't go overcomplicated with those resumes and experiences that you're trying to highlight on that. Keep it straight to the point. We want to appear interested, so don't come off as disinterested. A lot of what we're going to be focusing on with Zoom is focusing on the camera and less of looking at the screen, because then that shows that we're making eye contact with the interviewer. We don't want to come off arrogant, which again, I'm not too concerned about that with all of you. And I think humility is a great trait that we want to be able to express. So find that common ground and that middle ground between that. And again, that's going to come with practice. Appearing uninformed is, I think, one of the biggest ways to shoot yourself in the foot off from the get-go. Make sure you come in prepared. Whether you don't have questions if you don't have questions from the beginning, it's not going to be a positive reflection. So you always want to have some sort of insight into the organization, whether it's about their structure, the news, what they stand for, or even just their morals and values. That's a great way to start a conversation too. And then specifically, we want to have those specific examples when talking about our experiences too. So don't forget to provide those as well. So as we talk about preparing for that interview, again, these are some areas that you can do research on. So as we talked about those questions, I wanted to kind of give you an idea of how to help guide you to write some of those out. I say bring at least 3 or 4 of these to the interview so that you're prepared for the time. But you can do research on the company. So maybe we're learning about, are they publicly or privately traded company? What sort of leadership opportunities do they have in the organization? Any recent acquisitions, purchases? If we're a consumer good product company like Gallo, what new products maybe came out into the market? Understanding the industry. So maybe you're asking industry relevant questions about market trends, competitive advantages that their organization may have, or competition and what's going on in their space. And then the interviewer or the interviewers, you may even know who that is prior to the interview. So connect with them on LinkedIn, do a little research into their experiences, talk about any past interactions you had with company employees, and make sure again to be specific with those too. We want to have these questions prepared for the time when we connect with our interviewers. So put in that little bit of time before because it'll pay out all on the backside. And so we're in that interview. So I wanted to kind of just highlight a great method that we use in our interviews. It's called STAR. And I'm sure that the Career Center's talked about some of these previously, but I just wanted to highlight this with you all because this is a great way to help sell yourself in interviews. The STAR method is going to be kind of an effective storytelling strategy to kind of talk about a situation, how you address that, created action, and then what was to come along to follow. You have to think about it as a story, and there should always be a beginning, middle, and end. So the situation is us providing context around what is going on. A customer explained XYZ reason. So keep this short and quick and straight to the point. I think one of the biggest challenges I see early on is students not practicing this and us getting too caught up in the context and providing more than is needed. So think about the situation aspect of STAR should only be about 30 seconds. The task, so describe the challenges or the problems or what sort of adversity were you faced with and what were you going to be trying to achieve. Next, we're going to be getting into the action. So what did you exactly do? We solved this problem. I calculated this result. And ultimately that brings us to the result category. Start with state the benefits. What came to follow that? What was coming out afterwards? I think one of the questions that we often ask too is talk about a time when you worked your hardest for something but didn't achieve that desired result. And so we want to hear you when you were faced with adversity, provide a little context. When you were faced with a problem, what you did to try and solve that. And then you didn't solve that problem. You ran into kind of a barrier, but what did you learn from that? And what did you do to follow? I learned that next time I need to go about this in a different fashion and enlist in my partners and enlist in my leadership team. Again, talking about how you were able to grow from that and what was the result to follow. So now as we kind of really focus on that virtual interview components, I wanted to provide just some insight on some good interview tips and tricks for virtual interviews. Like I mentioned, look at the camera, not the screen. I think oftentimes as we all were first getting used to Zoom, we were really preoccupied on like wondering what we were looking like, or we were making eye contact with the recruiter, but it looks like we're kind of looking off to the side. So look at the camera as we're talking. Even though it's that virtual setting and we are at home or wherever you may be located, you need to still dress the part. Treat your virtual interviews like an in-person one, and we need to be dressed professionally from head to toe, or at least from the waist up if you're not going to be getting up and moving around. Prepare your surroundings. So this is a big one, especially for those that may be living with family members or friends of yours. Make sure you just let them know, I have a really important interview. I'm going to need some privacy for about 30 minutes. Can you guys please just be aware to be a little cognizant of the sound behind you? Make sure that you don't have a crazy backdrop and there's distracting things going on with people walking by. We want to keep our profiles professional. So LinkedIn professional headshots, but also those Zoom ones, as well as you have the little picture pop up before you turn on your camera. Professional names as well that come along with that. I know we'll change it to fun things when we're connecting with friends, but just make sure to switch it back is all our ask is. Practice makes perfect. You're going to hear me say that again. Practice, practice, practice. And then make sure to just close out the other programs on your computer, or at least have them muted so you're not getting alerts throughout, because that can be distracting and ultimately take away from the recruiter paying attention to you. I think one of the really cool things about working virtually now and having virtual interviews is you do have the ability to have notes in front of you. But what I would say is I want to put an asterisk next to this one. And that brings me to my next bullet point is do not rely on those notes too much. If you have something that you are very passionate about talking to with the recruiter and you don't want to forget that, you can make a note of it on a piece of paper just as a reference. But I think what you should do is just write something that's going to help jog your memory, not full sentences that you're trying to read off of. You just want that to jumpstart what your thought was again to continue the conversation, rather than looking like you're reading off a script, because it's an interview. It's supposed to come off natural. Avoid those interruptions. So we talked about preparing those surroundings. Watch your body language. Even though we're at home, you still want to appear interested. Lean in. We're not slouching. We're in the camera. I'm not over here hiding in the corner, hanging off. We want to, again, demonstrate that we're interested, and body language is going to come along with that too. I think most importantly, be able to be relaxed too. And you still want to use your hand gestures. You don't have to throw them around all crazy like I do in my presentations, but still gesture here and there and show that. Just connect early. Make sure that you can hop on a little bit early before, just to check your internet, your video, and your sound to make sure that all runs smoothly. You're going to be trying to keep the interview engaged. So stop every once in a while and make sure that they're still following along, reading that body language that they're giving you. And then follow up. I think that's really key too, is that short email that you send to them, thanking them for the time. We saw how Eddie sent messages to Mike, and he kept those tailored specific to something that they said in their conversation. So lean in on maybe something that the recruiter talked about their experience and how it left an impact on you, or something that you really loved about the organization that you didn't know prior to the interview. Keep it specific. These are a lot of the candidates that are a lot of the qualities that recruiters may be looking for. So successful candidates and employees are all of these. They're natural leaders. They're competitive in their work that they do and they want to achieve success. They're effective communicators. They're coachable and they're really eager to learn. Results oriented, committed to excellence, commanding presence and resilience. And so these are all qualities that you are going to want to try to showcase in these sorts of interviews, is just some guiding people skills. Again, these are all tough to sometimes talk about through our resume. And so really that's where the interview is going to come in and give us the opportunity to talk about how has that leadership experience helped us develop effective communication skills. How in our past experiences have we shown that we are coachable or results oriented? Again, speaking to those people skills when you're in that interview. And so now when you're working remote, I wanted to leave you guys with just some tips and tricks on how to best help yourselves be successful in your careers and also remain comfortable and healthy through these times, because working remote is challenging. And I think we're all in it together and we want you to feel comfortable with that. I think first and foremost, don't be afraid to ask for help, especially in a virtual setting. I know we oftentimes don't want to bog down our leadership or seem like we're pestering someone by over communicating, but in a setting like this where we're not necessarily working in a common space, we got to over communicate rather than under communicate, because our leadership team may not be checking on us every single day when you're working remotely. You want to reach out when you have problems, or if you're facing obstacles in your career of finding that balance between personal and work, because we are in that remote setting. Talk about it. Communication is really key in all avenues of business, and we got to lean on it now more than ever. Stay involved and connected with your colleagues. And so I always say support them. We got to always be willing to assist in staying involved with our teams, and that means staying connected with them. Care about your teams and check in on them. Just because we're virtual doesn't mean that everyone's doing great and working wonderfully from home. Everyone's going to kind of handle that in different fashions. And I think that goes really above and beyond with leadership teams when you check on your colleagues. And really, we should be doing that just as kind human beings, checking on our neighbor to see how they're doing, making sure they're doing okay, and asking those questions. Most importantly, I'd say too, is although we're virtual, don't sit quietly in these meetings, whether it's class, whether it's on a job, whether it's in an interview or a networking event. Our cameras should be on. We should be unmuted when we can, and we should be involved in those discussions. So stay present and stay here. It's not a time for us to hop on for class or hop onto work and put our icons up and then leave and go do other things. We need to be present. So make sure that you're staying present, and your camera on is going to help hold you accountable with that. And I think remain proactive. Self-motivation is really key for remote work. And so we got to make sure that we're proactive with the work that we're doing, but you also got to find that balance with your personal life too, because we also want to make sure that we're not sacrificing things around the house and other obligations that we have for the work that we're doing from home. As we talk about working remotely, I think first and foremost, master your craft before taking on new responsibilities. I know many of you USC students are involved in 501 things, and that is incredible. And I look up to you guys like no other for having that ability to do so. But I think in settings like this, where many of us are transitioning to remote work, where we may not be as comfortable, really get comfortable with what your responsibilities are now before we're taking on those new opportunities. But when you are presented new opportunities, remain open. And I think within that, that's where it comes back to that first bullet point of communicating. If your leadership team wants you to take on a new opportunity and you don't feel comfortable with it yet, you need to speak up and you need to let them know, I'm still adjusting to this and I want to get settled into my role and figure it out more confidently so that I can do this to the best of my ability before I take on any other responsibilities. But what I would say is once you've mastered that craft, be open to those new opportunities. Maybe that looks like you're a captain of your team of making sure to check in on people. Maybe you work in a business setting where you guys have to update certain trackers or spreadsheets each week, and you take on that opportunity to be the person that's going to spearhead that and connect with your team each day to make sure that that is upkept. And I think when you are given these opportunities, never do the bare minimum. We always want to try to do more than we're asked because it wants to show that we're committed and we care about what we're doing. So put your best effort forward. I'd say even though it's remote, you can still become a part and involved in the organization. A lot of companies are doing those virtual happy hours. So get connected on those. Even if you're not enjoying a cocktail or you're not 21 and not allowed to, it still is a great way for you to network and learn more about the culture in your team. And again, staying connected with them. Volunteer opportunities and ways to give back to our communities are still present, even in the virtual setting. So stay involved with those and stay committed. And I think more importantly, our communities need our support now more now than ever. So really we should try to help step up where we can and lend a helping hand. Those networking events. So when you're connecting with other colleagues or attending career events, attend those and take advantage of that. Informational sessions. Maybe someone in your organization is hosting an event around diversity and inclusion or talking about career opportunities and growth for your team and how you can grow in your organization. Take advantage of those opportunities, and I think be involved in the organization and what they can bring to the table for you. And then I think always remember, we never stop learning, and you should never stop looking for that personal and professional development. So make sure to continue with that and progress in your career and keep asking for those opportunities, because that is a great reflection on your leadership team when you are trying to grow professionally and personally, because again, it shows that you are invested and you want to contribute to something bigger. In terms of working remote and thinking of our spaces, I think always too, consider your workspace and invest in it. Got to make sure you have a comfortable chair. We should not be sitting on the couch slunched over the whole time. I'm telling you, you're going to kill your back doing it, especially after that first week. Try to find a desk or a surface for you to work on where you have a chair that you can sit back on. You can stay focused on the task at hand. You have a clean surrounding around you. You don't have stuff in every corner. We want to have a clean workspace because that's going to help with our productivity. I put wireless keyboard because some people like this because you want to be able to have flexibility to move around. Maybe you're going to try to stand up for a portion of the day and actually work on like a counter surface so that you're not sitting down all afternoon. Having that wireless keyboard can help with that. Headphones to minimize any of that background noise, especially if you live with roommates, have children, or are with your families that may be walking around or doing things around the house. And then I think most importantly, at the end of the day, it's whatever works best for you. You know yourself better than anyone else, and you know how you work successfully and what is the best environment for you. And so find those environments and think about the things that help you be successful in your work and make sure to surround those in your surroundings. You must create an environment for you to thrive in home. And really it's easily to be blurred between work and home nowadays, especially as a lot of the times we're doing these in these same settings. So you really need to draw a clear line in the sand. And again, find what works for you. And so we'll talk about on the next slide how to kind of distinguish work from home and really create that boundary so that we have that schedule. Embrace the perks of working from home too. And I think this is one of the really unique things. I've been connected with a lot of people recently that are going and traveling into other states or other areas to go and work remotely for a month because they don't have to be going into an office and they are going to be remote for that time. So maybe use this opportunity to go travel for a couple weeks and take your work with you. Get out of those four walls that we're trapped in our homes and go and experience a new setting. Maybe you have that mobile Wi-Fi on your cell phone and you connect to that hotspot and go work in a park for a couple hours. Again, embrace that work from home and really take the advantage to step out and go and experience something new, because oftentimes that can be that little refresher that you need to kind of make you feel rejuvenated and better about what you're working on. And then remote work and self-care. So I think do not sacrifice self-care for efficiency with projects. If I could have you all walk away with anything from this presentation today, it is we need to find balance in our lives now more than ever. Again, it's very easy to blur that line between work and home. And so we got to make sure that we're scheduling in those breaks and avoid overworking yourself. I like this quote on this glass that says, you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. And that's really important. And so I think I've been victim of it, where you schedule a break, but you get a phone call and you're like, I got to take this phone call for work and I need to respond to this email real quick. You got to disconnect and you got to hold yourself accountable to take that time to step away and really clear your mind. Zoom fatigue is real, so we need to get out from behind that screen. Actively getting up and walking around. Go for a quick walk outside. You're not going to fall behind in your work if you take a 10-15 minute break, excuse me, to go get some fresh air and get in the sun. That's really important for us to still stay active, even though we may be stuck in one place working remotely. We got to take that time to disconnect too. So when you are taking those breaks, I really advise you to leave your cell phones, get off the computer. Don't go from one screen to the next screen. Take a break to fully step away. Let your mind rest, take a breather, stay hydrated. Excuse me, I just hit super high pitch. Stay hydrated, because you got to keep your mind fresh if you want to be successful in the work that you're doing. And then again, take your entire break. This is one that I have fallen victim to. You schedule that 30-minute lunch break. Next thing you know, you're working through your entire lunch and you barely even ate, or you got a call from your boss and you were on that scheduled break. Take the second to just call them back later or shoot them a text and say, I'm on my break. I'll reach out to you right after. Don't forget to take those breaks for yourselves. And I think you got to make a schedule. You got to find out how to maintain those regular hours, and you have to log off at the end of the day. Turn off that computer, power it down completely. Completely disconnect when you're done at the end of the afternoon or the end of the evening, because if you don't, then you're going to get trapped, and there's always going to be something new that you can be doing to set yourself up for success the next day. But we got to find that balance, and you got to disconnect for your own personal well-being. And then last but certainly not least, I just wanted to leave you all with some main takeaways. So don't sacrifice your self-care. Self-care is so essential. You can't pour from an empty cup, and that really is true. So you got to take care of your cup. You got to stay full, and you got to make sure that you're taking care of your own health in all avenues. And that includes walking. That includes getting up, fresh air, staying hydrated, eating your lunches, and taking your breaks. Those are all important for our self-care. Create a routine for yourself and remain consistent. Stay consistent to your routine. If you have a structure that works for you, work within that structure and don't overcomplicate things. Routines are oftentimes what help us be really successful. So follow that routine if it's going to help you. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Over-communicate with your teams. Talk to your colleagues. Talk to your management. Talk to all other avenues of the teams that you work within, because communication is going to really help your team understand where you're at, where you need more support, or maybe where you can help support your team in new ways. Create that environment for you to thrive in. So making sure that you have a safe workspace, but also a comfortable workspace. We're not sitting on the floor, laying on our stomachs working. We have a comfortable chair. We're on a surface. If you want to stand up and work on a counter for a couple hours, do so, but find what works best for your environment. And then again, last but not least, take your breaks. Your breaks are going to make you and keep you sane, and we have to schedule those in. I found myself really struggling early on with what I would do is I would find my schedule when someone would reach out to me and want to connect. I would say, oh, I have a 30-minute gap here and a 30-minute gap there and a 30-minute gap there. And I would schedule people in all of those gaps. And the next thing I knew, I had 6 hours of presentations all back to back up to every minute with nothing in between. And so oftentimes taking your breaks actually means going into your calendar and blocking out a period where you're saying from 1 to 2, I'm not working. I'm stepping away from my computer, or for this 30 minutes. And if maybe taking that whole period of time is too much for you, break it up in breaks. Maybe you take 10, 15-minute breaks more frequently every 2 hours or hour and a half. And that's how you break it up. Again, you got to find what works for you. Everyone's going to be a little bit different, but these were some of the tips and tricks that we wanted to leave you all with today for working remotely, being able to find those opportunities through virtual. But I did want to save some time for any questions at the end too. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. I'm happy to stick around and answer those for you all. And thank you guys for being here tonight. I know it's a Thursday night and it's a little bit late, but thank you all for being present. It was super great being able to work with you all this evening. I'm also going to put my email in here too. We do have some opportunities for both full-time and post-grad, as well as a summer sales internship too. So if anyone wants to learn more about those, you're more than happy to email me. And then while people are probably thinking of a couple questions or two, I'm actually going to toggle over to the internet and grab my LinkedIn link, and I can share that with you all as well. So if you guys ever have questions and want to connect, always feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help you all. Need to move these little bars the wrong way. Here we go. Come on, internet. All right, here we go. I will send that now for you all. No questions from anyone at all? All right. Well, if there's no questions, thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate you being here. I'm glad I could lend a little bit of advice for you. Again, feel free to reach out to me if you guys need anything at all or want to connect further. I'm happy to answer questions specifically about your experiences and stuff too. And then don't forget too, you got an awesome Career Center team behind you, really trying to help support you through these times. And there's no better network than the Trojan Network. So really lean in on that alumni network. It's an awesome opportunity for you to get involved with past students that are now in their professional careers and learn more about industries that you can be interested in. And now the easiest thing about it all is we can hop on a Zoom call. You actually don't have to go and connect in person. So there's a lot of positives to this too. And I know there's a lot of adversity that we're facing. So stay confident, stay happy and healthy. And best of luck to all of you this semester. And as always, reach out if you need anything.
Thank you so much, Gino, for your wealth of information and the self-care that is definitely very much needed during these times. And I hope that the students do take time to, take care of their cup, as you were mentioning earlier, because without that energy, then we will definitely run out of our energy in terms of working and studying from home. So again, thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us this evening, and definitely would love to host you back.
Yeah, that sounds great. Feel free to let us know whenever you guys need some additional support. We're always happy to help. But thank you again. And if you need anything, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. I'm always here and available.
Great. And just for all the students that joined us, this will be available through our YouTube channel as well. The Career Center's YouTube, yes.
Esther, would you like me to send you this deck as a PDF for you guys to have the slides for any of that?
Sure, that'd be awesome.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Great.
I can send that on over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And you have a great evening.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.